Hello everybody and welcome to a brand new Elder Scrolls Online video with me, Sherman. Today we are taking a look at the Paladin. That's right, the Paladin is a tank build that now, I'm not going to take credit in the name. Outcast did release his first. I did have mine in the works. The last update when he released his, and so we are kind of sharing the same name, and I do apologize, Outcast, for using the same name, but it is a cool name and it kind of works for the builds that we both have supplied here. So I'm just going to go ahead and get right into this one. This is an Argonian Templar tank. As you can see, we have 14 in Magicka, 25 in health, 25 in the stamina. That gives us a 20k Magicka, 40k health, 21k stamina. We do have a higher crit, spell crit, but that's because of one of our sets. We do have a decent spell resist with a decent physical resist. We are running the Lord Mundus Stone on this build. I've been asked why not the Lady. The Lord gives us health. We are running Lord Warden too, and I'll get to that. So we do have Ebon Armory and Minor Heroism from Shulks. And also our primary stat food, which is Tri-Stat food, which we'll take a look at over here. Tri-Stat food gives you max health, magicka, and stamina. That works really good for this build, and we are using the Crown Tripods, but you're going to, on the live servers, you're going to want to use healthy pots. I am on PTS. Going on to the monster set, we are using the Lord Warden. This is by far the best setup for this build because it gives really good group support. Especially for your stamina DPS, it gives them some extra resistances, helps them stay a little bit more survivable. When you break down the math on this, it gives them roughly about a 5% increase. Just about a 5% increase, depending on where their own resistances are. It can give them a 5% increase in their mitigation. But it's mainly there for you, because it'll put you at that cap almost of 32k resistances. Going on to the next set, we are running the Ebon set. Now, just going over Lord Warden, what this does is it gives you two things of resistance, spell and physical. And then whenever you take damage, you have a 50% chance, which is all the time, to summon this orb that is going to give anyone within 8 meters 3,870 extra resistances. This tank is a stand your ground tank. This tank does not need to move. Moving on, we have Ebon. Ebon's really powerful for this particular setup because it does offer some group support. And in most situations, you only need one tank running Ebon in your group, except for the new trial. You do kind of, it's good to have both running Ebon because you do separate into two separate groups. But if you set up your group right in the new trial, you can separate it to where one group is gonna stick with the main tank who's using this, and the one that separates the other one they'll all have roughly about 18k health anyways, so they can go with them, and Warhorn will keep them at 20. Moving on to the jewelry, we are running a 5-piece shulks on the sword and board and the jewelry. It's easier to get shulks like this and Ebon like this. Trust me, I've farmed this stuff long enough. So shulks is easy to get. It drops in Stonefalls. And it's a really good set. It gives you max health, spell damage, spell crit, and it gives you minor heroism at all times. And that's why we're running this in combination with this. A lot of people have asked me why not Alkosh. Alkosh only one tank needs, and there's no reason for two tanks to have it. So the main tank can run Alkosh, and you can run anything, pretty much anything else. And this is a good set you can use. You can use something like Brands of the Imperium, or even the set that drops in Maw, the heavy set that gives everyone a small shield whenever you synergize. That's a really good one, but the shield is really small. It's about equal to like a weak decay shield, so it's like a 2.5. Well, you can get it up to 3k with the right CP, but you have to trade out a lot, and you don't really want to. So alright, moving on to the traits and the enchants. On the big pieces, you want all tri-stats, and on this one, you want all infused on the big pieces here, but your shields, you want them sturdy. On the smaller pieces here, you can see we have sturdy. This is going to be ideal for this particular setup. And the reason you want the tri-stats infused is so they give you the maximum stat bonuses. Because Ebon, you don't get as much health with Ebon as you do with Plague Doctors, so you're not going to get as much magic and stamina on this type of setup. So the trade-off would be if you have somebody running Ebon, run Plague Doctors. And Plague Doctors will give you a much better pool for magic and stamina with this particular setup. But for this, we're going with Ebon. And like I said, infused big pieces, sturdy smaller ones, and sturdy on the shield. Infused swords with Crusher enchants. And then on the small pieces, you want healthy. And on the big ones, you want tri-stats. And then on the jewelry, you want 2 tri-rune with 1 infused. And this infused, you want the potion cooldown. On the 2 smaller ones, you want shield play. These reduce your block cost and your bashing cost. So both are really good. I did try with 2 of the ones that give you the bash damage. But you give up too much block, and you'd have to go all 3 of these sturdy as well. And then you could do that, and it's actually kind of fun because you can bash enemies for like 5k. Because with this setup, bashing costs you nothing. With that other one, it's going to cost you more, but at the same time, your bash hits like a bus. So it was just something I was messing around with. But yeah, just go with this setup. It works out really good, and this is really good at in-game, guys. So going on to the skills, make sure you get all your class passives, especially with this one. You really want to make sure you get all the class passives because you're using skills from all the trees, and they're all going to be beneficial for you and your group. Moving on to the weapon skills. Sword and board only, so you just need the sword and board passives. On to the armor, light armor, you want the top 3, especially with the Templar, because the Templar also has a special passive called Restoring Spirit, which reduces magicka, stamina, and ultimate cost by 4%. So having all the armor passives, like make sure you get these, like Evocation, the 2% reduced cost. This makes your spell cost 6, and it makes your stamina cost 6% because you have the passives from these 2. You also want to make sure you get athletics because of the 4% reduced dodge roll cost. And then heavy armor, you want them all. On this, you can be a vampire, and I will be honest, guys, I did test it with a vampire originally, and I didn't notice a difference with or without it. Because my health never dropped below 50% in the 2 things that I tested this build on. I tested this build in 2 different dungeons. City of Ash 2, and then last night I went and tested it again in Crypt of Hearts 2. So I got to test it in both of those, and it works really good in there. The group that I was playing with didn't want to go into Skullcaller or any of the DLC dungeons because they just don't like the difficulty of the DLC dungeons. But I can tell you, this, like in City of Ash 2, which is one of the harder base dungeon, like extra dungeons from the base game, is just, it's cakewalk. It's super easy. Like, this thing just made it look like a joke. Moving on to the guild skills. Fighters Guild, you don't really need any of this extra stuff. Just Banish the Wicked. Mages Guild, you do want to get Persuasive Will. Psijic Order, you just need the bottom 2 passives because you do use 1 Psijic Order ability, which is Deep Thoughts. Concentrated Barrier is super awesome, and so is Deliberation on tanks. Like, those 2 are just amazing. We do have Inner Rage unlocked, even though we do not use it, but you can equip it if you want. We are using the passives, though, from the Undaunted. And then moving on to the racial passives, you want to make sure you get the Argonian racial passives for this. It's just, yeah, there's just no question. Medicinal use, and then on to provisioning the Gourmand and Connoisseur. Now, I will say this about the races, guys. You can use any race to tank with. Argonian just happens to be the best option because of its passive for potion use. It makes it a lot easier for resource management. If you're playing any other race, you really have to focus on that resource management, and you have to play really well into it to a certain degree. And sometimes it means changing, like, you're going to be flawed. You're going to be more flawed, depending on what race you choose. But any race can tank. Alright, going over to the skills on the main bar, we are using Pierce Armor. This applies Major Breach, Major Fracture. It is also our primary taunt, and only taunt, for this, the way it's set up right now. Like I said, you can use the Undaunted Inner Fire if you want, but I would suggest using that on the back bar. Next, we have Deep Slash. This applies Minor Maim for 12 seconds, and it can apply it up to 3 targets, which makes it ideal. Because in a lot of encounters in this game, you're going to be fighting a lot of trash. You're only going to be fighting bosses at certain incremental times. The rest of the time you're fighting trash. So getting that chance to apply Minor Maim to multiple targets is really good. The next ability we have is Blazing Shield. This is our primary shield. Now, some people will say that the other shield is better. And they are correct in the sense of power and how much it gives you in shield strength. But it's not as good as this because of one factor. This can also explode damage outwards. So this thing absorbs damage, and as all the damage it absorbs, it blasts out 52% of it back to the enemy. So it's actually a really good trade-off. But, like I said, you tell me what you think. This is a 13k shield, almost 14, and when you buff with this, it goes to a 20k shield almost. The trade-off's very, very well worth it. The next ability we have on our bar is Honor the Dead. This is our primary heal. This can heal yourself or a wounded ally in front of you. Your allies with this build, you never want them in front of you. You want this heal for yourself. This is your selfish heal. But if your allies do need it, you can turn and you can, you know, pop your own bubble and then cast it on them. But look how much magicka that uses. So be careful using this. The next ability we have on our bar is Deep Thoughts. The main reason why we have Deep Thoughts is it is going to be the best ability any tank can have on their bar when it comes to survivability and sustain. Because of how this works. First off, it is a channel, or it is a meditate channel ability. So when you activate this, you go into a channeled like thing, and you can see it gives you magicka and health back. It also gives you stamina back. And it gives you back 1806 health, but look at this thing's hitting for a lot more because we're Argonian, we're wearing heavy armor. It's just really powerful. On top of that, it also gives us 1900 or 1914 magicka and stamina back every 1 second. But that's not the best part. The best part is Deliberation. While this is active, you get major protection, which reduces your incoming damage by 30%. Deliberation works best on a Warden, or Deep Thoughts works best on a Warden and on a Templar. It does work good on a DK, but a DK doesn't have the mitigation capabilities that the Warden and the Templar have when it comes to the 8% minor damage reduction, or minor protection, which can stack with this. So moving on, the next ability we have on our bar is Aggressive Warhorn. This is pretty much essential for most tanks at endgame. This grants you max magicka, max stamina, and minor toughness at all for 10%. So it just basically increases all your stats of you and your group members by 10%, and then gives you 30 for 30 seconds. And it gives your group critical major force, which increases critical damage by 15% for 9.5 seconds. It's just, yeah, you're going to want that in endgame. The next ability, next on our bar, sorry, moving to the back bar, and the next things on our bar is Silver Leash. This is going to be our main pull, and if the enemy can't be pulled, you still apply the movement speed thing, but it doesn't like you still spend 3,300 stamina. And it's great on Templars because you get the 6% reduced cost. So the next ability we have on our bar is Luminous Shards. Now, you can use Blazing Spear on this, Blazing Spear Shards, but it's really up to you. Blazing Spear is basically going to be like giving orbs, but with Luminous Shards, you give them both magicka and stamina back, which is really good. And it's really good, especially if you're both tanking at the same boss, and you throw your ally, your other tank, a Spear Shard, they're going to get both magicka and stamina back. So the next ability we have on our bar is Extended Ritual. This is a really powerful cleanse for you, and your allies can also use it to cleanse themselves of negative effects, and it removes all harmful effects, and it heals them. This also does a tick heal for you and your group members. It's not a very big one for your allies, but for you, it can be pretty powerful. So that extra, 1,000 health almost coming in can be really good. So try to keep that up as much as you can. The next ability we have is Purifying Light. Now, the reason we have Purifying Light on the bar is after I did some testing. You can use Reflective Light if you're solo playing, but if you're playing in a group, you want to play Purifying Light. If you're in the open world, you're doing quests like Reflective Light. If you're playing with a group, this. The reason you want this is this thing stacks damage. So it does damage on the initial hit, and then it releases 20% of it as additional magic damage to the target. So it absorbs damage and a total of 12,492, but when it ends, it heals nearby allies every 2 seconds for 6 seconds for 1,953 health. And it is a 6 meter, it is a 10 meter radius. So just to show you, like, I can do it from right here, I think it is, right here. We'll see. Oops, a little bit closer. A little closer. Okay, so it's a 5 meter radius around the enemy. So if the enemy dies, you can stay right here and just, like, you can heal off of it. And if you're tanking and it goes off, you're going to get that heal. So it's going to keep you healed while you're fighting or while you're tanking. And it's just a really good ability. The next one we have is Restoring Focus. Now, this is what makes a Templar tank, especially this particular type of Templar tank, so effective. One, it grants you Major Ward, Major Resolve, which gives you your increased physical and spell resistance. It gives you Minor Vitality, increasing your healing received by 8%. And then Minor Protection, reducing incoming damage by 8%. Now, when I say this is a stand your ground kind of tank, you drop this, and as long as you stay within the circle, this is what your resistances look like base. Now, you can move out of the circle for 8 seconds and move back in, and you will still retain all that stuff, including Minor Mending, which increases your healing done by 8%. So any heals you cast while you have this out, including this one, are now boosted by 8%. So it goes up to 1,000 health per second. So this is a really, really good ability to have, because it makes it so much better for you. And the fact that you're an Argonian, you can keep this up all the time, because they're both super cheap abilities. So you're going to want to keep this and this applied as much as possible. This you're going to want to keep up as much as possible, along with your Blazing Shield. This is kind of like one of those oh poop moment kind of things. And if you have your shields up, all your buffs up, and then you cast this can heal you for 10k, 16k. So it's a really powerful thing. And then, of course, if you're having issues with resources, you can pop a pot, boom. Like I said, Argonians are crazy when it comes to resource management. The last ability we have on our bar is Solar Disturbance. Now, this is just here in case we need to apply Major Maim to a lot of targets, because it's a 28 meter range ability. You can cast it within 28 meter range, but it's got a like 10 meter effect. So if I go over here, I'm just going to show you guys this. I'm going to drop this on him. See how big that circle is, that effect? That whole circle that it covers, that those meteors are covering around, are actually giving the solar prison, which is going to give us major protection. So that's going to give us that major, or it's going to give them, the enemy, sorry, not major protection, it's going to give the enemy minor maim, and it's also a synergy. So the allies can synergize off it. It's going to do magic damage to all enemies within the area, stunning them for 2.5 seconds. So you have a synergy, and you have this major maim you can apply to the enemies. Now, if enemies leave the area, they still retain major maim for 6 seconds after they leave it. So it's way more better than you think. And it's just really good to keep on your back bar, just for those moments where, like, oh no, gotta be safe. Alright, now that you guys have seen that, let's go ahead and take a look at the CP. Starting with the red tree, we have 56 in the Ironclad, reducing our direct damage taken by 20%. 23 in the Thick Skin, reducing damage over time effects by 10%. Blah. 56 in the Hardy and Elemental Defender. These both give us 12% damage reduction, which, when we put down our circle, gives us another 8%. So this actually goes to 20% damage reduction. So when we use Deliberation, or the Sigic Meditate thing, the Meditate ability, we actually go to a 50% damage reduction. So this what makes this so much better on the Warden and on the Templars. They both get minor protection, all, like, constantly as tanks. Moving on, we have 40 into Bastion. This increases our damage shields by 16%. We have Quick Recovery 19. Increases healing received by 5%. And then moving on over here, we have 56 in the Warlord, reducing Break Free by 20%. 23 into Bashing Focus. This reduces Bash cost by 14%. And then 3 into Sprinter, because we didn't really have any place to put the 3 points. We have 43 into Tenacity. This increases our stamina return on fully charged heavy attacks. 44 into Tumbling, reducing dodge roll by 17%, and 81 into Shadow Ward, giving us a 24% block cost reduction. That extra 4% actually does play well with this build. So, moving on, we have 76 in the Bless. This increases healing done by 14%. Elfborn 56. This increases our critical heals done with magic by 20%. And I went ahead and put 43 into here to give us a 10% extra on our magic damage ability. Spear or Luminous Shards, because we are using it, why not benefit from it a little bit? And then moving on over here, we have 40 into Master Arms to give us Reposit. And then we do have some points over here, 32 into Mighty, and then 3 into Piercing. This just, you know, just kind of helps us with some physical damage, I guess. We're not using any stamina abilities, so, except for our Pierce Armor and Taunt. But yeah, it's just kind of nice to have the capabilities that this build does. It's a really, really self-sufficient build, and it's just it can retain, like, a lot of its effects while it's playing. And let's go see how well it works. So I did test this yesterday in my live stream to show people how well it can work in both normal and in veteran against the trash that you fight in the beginning. This is just going to give you guys an idea of how well this build can mitigate damage. That's it. That's what we're going in here for. And all I can say is, like, I've played a lot of builds. Besides the Death's Wind build, this is my second favorite, kind of, besides Northern Wind. I mean, I have, like, out of all the tank builds I've released this last week, Northern Wind, this, and Death's Wind are my favorites. Some of the other builds I did enjoy testing and playing around with, but nothing beats this. Like hands down. Even Meridia's Guardian wasn't as exciting to play to a degree as this. Oops, I'm still in veteran. Okay, well, you guys will be able to see this build in its true form. So we are going to have to pull some enemies. Now I'm going to have to get some heals going real quick. So let's go ahead and pull these enemies to us. And then what we're going to do is we're going to do this, we're going to do this, and then I'm going to keep my... Oop, I cast the wrong ability. So we're going to go ahead and pop a pot. Get some more resources back. Keep our damage shield up. Keep this up. Keep Power of the Light and this. And then you can throw Spear Shards when you need them, like I said, because it does add a little bit of extra DPS. But as you guys can see, like, I'm having very little resource issues. And all I have to do is really cast this and this, mostly, and Blazing Shield. And I can just stand here, like this. And if I need resources... like I said, this thing, you can mitigate so much damage. And then, of course, if you have this going, your Warhorn, and then you do all your little nifty tricks, it still doesn't change anything, but it gives you a little bit more resource pool to play with, because you go to 23k stamina with a 22k magicka, and now you can just pretty much stand here just holding block. Now, there is another reason why we have Blazing Spear on the back bar, and I'm going to go into this stuff because I want to be very adamant about the tanking with the Templar, so people understand how well the Templar tank actually is. The Templar tank is second best, hands down tank. Now, a lot of people argue the Warden. Warden is really good because it has good resource management. But when it comes to overall tanking, the DK and the Templar are the top dogs because they have passives built into them that make them better tanks. The Adric Spear ability spear line is the tank line for the Templar. This one, you get Piercing Spear. Not really necessary, but it allows you to increase your damage against blocking targets by 10%. Spear Wall increases the amount of damage you block from melee attacks. Now this is, when it says melee attacks, this is any physical attack that you take from an enemy. That means Wrecking Blow, Carve, Low Slash, you know, Taunt, like the Pierce, whatever. It's reduced by 15% while you're blocking. Now this, along with the weapon ability, Sword and Shield, Sword and Board, also reduces incoming damage by 20% when blocking. So that's a 35% damage mitigation you get. Now, no tank in this game can block 50% of the damage besides the DK, and only on ranged attacks. On their front, when they're blocking on their front, on the melee side, they actually only mitigate 30% of the incoming damage unless they're using defensive posture, where it will take them up to 38%. Now, why 30%? Because they have a passive in the class that gives them a 10% block, additional block. So on the back bar, they also get Deflect Bolts, which increases the amount of damage you can block from projectiles in range by 15%. So this makes the Templar have a 35% front block, melee block, and ranged block. The DK doesn't have that. They have 30%. And then on the back, they have a 45% from spell and projectiles. So they do block more range damage better than the Templar. But if I put this on the bar, now I can block 43% melee and 43% ranged and projectiles. And if the DK puts this on their bar, they get 38% on melee and they get 53% ranged. So that's the trade-off between the two. But when it comes to sword and board tanking, they are both very equal and very good at it. Probably the best. Because Wardens only get 28% with defensive posture. Without, they only get a 20% block. But they do get a damage shield that reflects projectiles or absorbs projectiles, but that's about it. And I can do the same thing with this, where I can absorb one projectile. So it's like, you know, we have that trade-off, but still, Templars are really good tanks. It's just, they're not super tanks. They don't have a group damage shield. But they still have something that the DK doesn't. And that's really good group healing. That's why I prefer Templars over DKs. But that's it for the Paladin build, guys. It is an awesome build. It is, like I said, besides Meridia's, like, okay, so to give you guys the layout, in reality of how I like the builds, I like all the tank builds I released this week, except one of the DK builds I didn't really care for, and one of the Nightblade builds I didn't really care for. all the other builds were really good and really enjoyable. They're tanks that I could play and I could have fun with. But, hands down, none of them meet the Avenger in what I prefer playstyle. The Avenger is by far the best tank build I have played in this game ever. So, but that's pretty much it for this build video, guys. I know I kind of ranted and stuff at the end, and I do apologize, but I did want to clear some things up so people had a greater understanding of how tanks work. I will be doing guides here soon. After the 5th of June, I will be releasing guide videos on a lot of stuff, including tanking with sword and board, tanking with two-handed, tanking with dual wield, and tanking with ice staff. Or even staves in general, and I will be covering all that in videos. I'll be doing guides on tanking with all the different subjects and how they work and how you can make them work to your advantage. But that's pretty much it. So, hope you guys liked the video. If you guys did, hit that like button. If you guys want to see more build videos or other videos by me, you can hit that subscribe button. Other than that, I want to thank you all for watching. Until next time, have a wonderful day, and this guy might see you in game. Bye.